There's a forgotten treaty in American history that's so important that without it, the nation might never have stretched from sea to shining sea. So today, we're going to uncover the diplomatic masterstroke that quietly but completely secured America's future and unlocked its path westward. Okay, we all know the story of the Louisiana Purchase, right? That huge deal in 1803 that literally doubled the size of the United States. But what if I told you the real key to that deal wasn't struck in Paris with Napoleon? What if it happened years earlier, in a completely different European capital? The answer isn't just about Thomas Jefferson's brilliant vision or Napoleon being desperate for cash. Nope. The real groundwork, the thing that made it all possible, was laid 8 full years before the purchase, with this treaty that almost nobody talks about anymore. And believe me, it changed everything. So to really get why this treaty was such a game changer, we have to go back to the 1790s. The brand new United States was facing this massive threat, and it wasn't an army. It was a geographic and economic choke point that was seriously threatening to tear the country in two. See, after the Revolution, Americans just poured over the Appalachian Mountains. But for all these farmers and pioneers out in places like Kentucky and Tennessee, well, there were no highways, no railroads. Their only way to get stuff like flour and tobacco to market was to float it all down the mighty Mississippi River. And right there, that was the crisis. The Mississippi was their lifeline. But the big obstacle? Spain. Spain controlled the all-important port of New Orleans, and they could, and often did, just shut it down to American trade whenever they felt like it. This was literally strangling the West's economy. And let me tell you, when your entire economic future is getting choked off, your loyalty to a government that's way off on the East Coast starts to fade. There was real, dangerous talk of just breaking away from the U.S. entirely. So President Washington knew this was an absolute existential crisis. To fix it, he needed exactly the right person, a diplomat with this unique mix of battlefield grit and incredible patience, basically tailor-made for a mission this important. And that's where Thomas Pinckney comes in. He was a South Carolinian aristocrat, a wounded veteran of the Revolutionary War, and a really seasoned diplomat. His defining traits were his calm, unshakable resolve and an almost superhuman amount of patience. And those qualities, they were about to be put to the ultimate test. I mean, look at this guy's resume. He goes from being a Continental Army officer who is captured in battle to the governor of South Carolina, and then he becomes the U.S. ambassador in London. By the time Washington tapped him to go to Spain in 1794, Pinckney was absolutely one of America's most experienced diplomats. Now, Pinckney wasn't just relying on his own skills. He was walking into a situation where the entire geopolitical chessboard of Europe was shifting under everyone's feet, creating this sudden, unexpected opening for the United States. You see, before 1794, Spain held all the cards. They were confidently blocking American expansion and had zero reason to even talk to the U.S. But then, Europe just erupted into war. Spain found itself on the losing side of a nasty war with revolutionary France. All of a sudden, they're weak and they're getting really paranoid that the U.S. and Great Britain, who had just signed their own treaty, were about to team up and just take Spain's territories in North America by force. Historian Samuel Flagg Bemis put it perfectly. He said, "America's advantage resulted from Europe's distress. The United States was about to cash in, not because it was so strong, but because the great powers of Europe were in total turmoil." So, Pinckney gets to Madrid and finds a Spanish government that's nervous and actually looking to make a deal. But that did not mean it was gonna be easy. What happened next was just a masterclass in diplomatic poker. For months, Spain's top minister, a guy named Manuel de Godoy, just stalls and delays, hoping to wear Pinckney down. But he completely underestimated Pinckney's patience. The Americans stayed polite, but was absolutely rock solid on his core demands. When Godoy finally said no to the most critical point, duty-free access to New Orleans, Pinckney played his trump card. He demanded his passports, which is the formal way of saying, "Talks are over, I'm going home." It was a massive high-stakes bluff. Godoy, terrified of what would happen if the negotiations failed, just couldn't let him walk away. The ultimatum worked, and the result was one of the most lopsided and successful treaties in American history. October 27th, 1795. That's the day the deal was signed. And with that one signature, the map and the entire future of the United States were changed forever. Officially, it's called the Treaty of San Lorenzo, but here in the U.S., it's forever known as Pinckney's Treaty. And it was just a stunning victory. America gave up basically nothing.
and in return, we got everything we wanted.
I mean, just look at the scale of this win. America got free navigation of the entire Mississippi River. We secured the all-important right of deposit, which let American merchants use the port of New Orleans completely tax-free. Spain also agreed to the 31st parallel as the U.S. southern border, which meant giving up huge areas of disputed land. And on top of all that, Spain promised to stop encouraging Native American attacks on American settlers. It was a total, complete diplomatic home run. And this wasn't just some dusty piece of paper. The treaty's impact was immediate, and it was profound. This was the key that finally unlocked the American West. By securing their economic lifeline, the treaty pulled those Western settlers right back into the arms of the United States. All that dangerous talk about separating from the Union, it just evaporated. And with the river now open for business and the frontier a whole lot safer, a brand new, massive wave of Western settlement just exploded. And this, right here, is where it all comes together. The treaty led directly to creating the Mississippi Territory. But even more important, by establishing American control over the river, it set the stage perfectly for the Louisiana Purchase just a few years later. Without Pinckney's hard work, Jefferson's legendary deal might have been completely impossible. So it leaves you with this really fascinating question, doesn't it? We rightly celebrate the big military victories and the bold moves by presidents that built America. But could the story of a nation stretching from sea to shining sea have ever even been written without the quiet, patient, and absolutely determined victory of a single diplomat in a Spanish court? Makes you think.